Sasha Martinengo.
Storming down the pit lane.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time on balls.co.za.
Joining us, and it's so great to have him back on the show, is the one and only F1 Elvis, otherwise better, well, I don't know, you better known as F1 Elvis or Marc Priestley?
Yeah, excuse me, my other phone's going. Bad timing. Yeah, sorry, Sasha. One second.
No problem, no problem. You're a very popular guy, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, generally, Elvis has always been a nickname of mine. Everybody in motor racing generally knows me as Elvis, so I quite like it. So I've decided to sort of stick with it and go with it. So yeah, Elvis is fine.
It's a very cool. Listen, it's a very prestigious name to have. That's for sure. How did they call you Elvis?
Well, it's a very, very tenuous link to my surname, Priestley. It sounds ever so slightly like Presley, I guess, and it's something that I've had since school and has generally kind of stuck, so I quite enjoy it.
Excellent. Listen, Mark, last time we spoke was just before Valencia, and you know we didn't really have the opportunity to chat about you and your sort of 10 years that you spent at McLaren. So before we talk about what we anticipate is going to happen this coming weekend in Silverstone, I mean, you worked for one of the most prestigious and successful teams in Formula One history, and that of course being McLaren.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I absolutely every single minute of it, and it was a real dream come true. When I first set out to get into motor racing, of course, as most guys, I guess, age at the time, I was a teenager, sort of straight out of college, and I had a dream of work on, and at that point, it mattered to me it was. In all honesty, I just wanted to make it into Formula One. And I used to write letters and emails every single year to all of the teams, and every year on year, I used to get letters back saying, thanks very much, but you haven't got enough experience, but we'll keep your name on file, etc., etc. So when the one year I got an email or a letter from McLaren to say, it really come true, because not only did it result in me getting a job in Formula One, which is everything I always wanted, it's one of the biggest and best teams of all time. So yeah, absolutely thrilled and loved every moment of being there.
I suppose, listen, the $1 million question: what is Ron Dennis really like?
Well, Ron Dennis is. I think all the years I worked there, I think when people work for Ron Dennis, he can be difficult. It can be a pain, and you perhaps don't appreciate. Ron's attention to detail is second to none. And I'm not exaggerating that. He has very, very high expectations of anybody who works there. And of course, while you're during your time working there, that can be difficult to work with. It can be frustrating. However, since I've left McLaren and I now look back, I appreciate a lot more what Ron did and what Ron does for that company. And he's a great man. As I said, he's got extremely high standards, and that is reflected throughout the whole company. I can tell you that the sort of disappointments that McLaren have had in terms of pit stops and any mistakes that they've had this year, no one will be feeling that more, and it won't be hurting anyone more than it will be hurting Ron Dennis. That's the company. And nothing but perfection really is good enough for him, and it's a good way to run. He's striving for perfection all the time. Yeah, and I think McLaren have sort of mission upon that.
Yeah, listen, I'm the first to sit there and say I think McLaren raised the bar years and years back, and most of the teams actually followed suit, and attention to detail, the cleanliness around pit. Besides Mr. Bernie Eccleston, I think Ron Dennis and McLaren were very instrumental in bringing up the levels that we see today. Yeah,
absolutely, and that all stems from Ron Dennis, and Ron's a sort of visionary. He has visions way ahead of a lot of other people. A lot of the time people laugh at him for it, initially. Yeah. But not. I think he's been proved that his visions are good. He's very, very successful in business, and he's put McLaren into financially a very, very healthy position, where the teams around them are not doing so well. Let's not forget McLaren at the moment are one of the few sort of independent teams. They're not owned by a major manufacturer. It's something that Ron's built up. Yes, he's had a lot of help and he's all up in the right positions, but at the end of the day, Ron has to take a huge amount of credit for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mark. I really echo those sentiments 100%. Yesterday, wow, what a day in Formula One, Mark. I mean, a horrific accident for Maria Di Villota. And I mean, sketchy reports about it actually what happened, but from I picked up a BBC radio commentary yesterday. It sounds really horrible.
Yeah, it really, really was. And I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but I've been at those sort of straight line aero mapping tests many times, and it's a very low key kind of event. Nothing like a Formula One Grand Prix. It really is. The team, the venue in that case was an airstrip hired out for the day. Just them there. They have perhaps a tent to work, a small awning to work from, and their trucks and vehicles are just parked sort of at the end of the runway. And they don't take safety lightly. The cars are doing 200 miles an hour up and down the strip whilst they're doing their aero mapping, and it sounds like what happened, and it is very sketchy reports, like you say. But during the point where she was sort of pulling back into the pit area very slowly, something happened. As I heard you say earlier, there are some sketchy reports about whether she was caught out by anti-stall. I don't know, and only the guys who will be working at the team will know for sure. But something went wrong, and she lurched forward, relatively slowly, but unfortunately and tragically hit the tail lift of the truck, which was unfortunately right at the wrong height. Exactly. And it looks like crash helmet took the brunt of the impact there. It's very sad. Now, I mean, listen, we've been talking about it, and we just wish her well and a good, speedy recovery. Just a very sad and tragic. Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah, tragic issue. Most importantly, we're looking forward to this weekend, Mark. The weather. What's it gonna do?
Well, I live in England, and I'm well used to this now. We sort of have forgotten the days of summer here. So being mid-July, we can sort of expect. I think looking at the forecast for the 4 days, it does look like there's going to be rain every day. It may not be rain constantly every day. Part of it looks like it's going to be showers at spells. But certainly each of the sort of 4 days of the Grand Prix weekend are going to be affected at some point by rain. And this season I don't think needs any particular spicing up more than it already has done, but perhaps the weather will certainly play a part and may help to do that. I think we had it last year at Silverstone. The whole weekend again was affected by rain. It played a big part in the outcome of the race. I think we can probably expect it to do the same again this weekend. Yeah,
I was fortunate enough to be at Silverstone last year. Saturday was freezing, and then Sunday we had a bit of sun, and then there was a bit of rain, and another terrific Grand Prix. The one thing I want to know, Mark, is, I mean, you've worked in Formula One teams. Yes, most of your tenure, I think you must have worked with a bit of Michelin and Bridgestone tyres.
That's right.
Yeah, very interesting comment that came out from I think it was Helmut Marko, and saying about the Pirelli tyres that every set is completely different. And I'm sure Pirelli won't take too kindly to that kind of a comment, but I mean, is that something that's part and parcel? Does that actually happen, that they can be so different, one set of a tyre, same compound to another?
Well, it's very uncommon, and as you say, I've worked with Michelin and I've worked with Bridgestone, and I think in all those years, I think of course, the two people really know. You put a set of tyres onto a car, having just run another set, but the amount of times where you do that, particularly out testing, where you put another the same compound on without changing the car, are very rare. When you're testing, you're generally doing back-to-back with tests against one compound with the same compound, having made a setup change to the car in between runs. So it's not that often that you would do a run, put another set of exactly the same set of tyres on, and do another run without changing anything. And
yes,
so it's very difficult to tell. And even if you do find you think is different, there's not really any way of actually telling. There's all sorts of variables that play their part with tyres, with things like track temperature, fuel loads, which are always coming down, obviously during the race.
Of course.
Weather and everything, and pressures and everything else. There's a whole load of things. So it's very, very difficult to pinpoint a difference between two sets of tyres. I think the particular last couple of weeks, we have to take a little bit what Helmut Marko has said with a pinch of salt, because he's come out with a couple of radical comments in these last weeks, particularly suggesting that the safety car at Valencia was designed purely to mess up Sebastian Vettel's race.
Yes.
So he's got a little bit of a bee in his bonnet, I think, against the rules, and we should perhaps take that, with a pinch of salt, like I say.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Yeah, his comment about the conspiracy was rather laughable. Let's be honest. Mark, from your side, I mean, we pick up quite a lot of information over here, but I mean, is there anything that perhaps we're missing out on for this coming weekend in Silverstone? Maybe you got some inside knowledge that we'd love to hear.
Well, I can tell you is that having spoken to some of the guys at McLaren week, following Valencia, they've put an awful lot of work into pit stops. They had that front jack failure during the race in Valencia 2 weeks ago, and they've done a redesign on the jack to try and make sure that that's not possible to happen again. They've also done what the guys say, hundreds and hundreds of pit stops at the beginning of this week back at the factory. Many more than you would ever do over a course of a race weekend, and they've done that without any failures. So from their point of view, their pit stops are back on track. We saw a very, very, and I think possibly even the fastest ever Formula One pit stop from them during that race, and all they're really missing now is the consistency to deliver that every time, and they firmly believe they've got that now.
Yeah.
The other thing they'll be bringing this week is some upgrades to the car, mainly aero upgrades, but they think that it's going to bring them around about a tenth of a second a lap at Silverstone, which is significant. And they firmly think that they can mix it with Red Bull, despite Red Bull's upgrades in Valencia, which develop advantage in performance. They don't think the gap between the two is as big as many other people thought back in Spain 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I must agree with that one. I think the one team that would be a little bit concerned about the speed of both McLaren and Red Bull is definitely Ferrari. Alonso is making that car look, in my opinion, a lot better than perhaps what it is, even though it has improved dramatically.
You cannot underestimate the job that Fernando has done.
Sure.
Back at the start of the season was midfield at best. For now, one single point slipped by that's been available, and that's the sort of thing where sort of on the flip side of that, of course, McLaren had probably the best car at the start of the season and have let a lot of points slip through their fingers. And when it comes to the end of the championship, end of the season, those are what are going to count. If Ferrari can continue to develop, and they need to, those points that they managed to sort of scrabble together in the first few races are going to be vital. And equally so, the ones that McLaren lost could well be vital, and but in the wrong way.
Yeah, it's definitely a yo-yo season, and I'm glad. I just hope that it carries on the way that it is. It's really great. Anybody, Mark, that's impressed you more than you thought would have done at the beginning of the season?
Well, I think obviously Fernando. I think that's an obvious one. I think perhaps I know how good Fernando is, so perhaps it's not so much of a surprise. But he's obviously done a great job. I think Daniel Ricciardo down at Toro Rosso.
Yeah.
I think he's impressed a lot of people. Recently beat his teammate, and I think perhaps his teammate's been a little disappointing, really, from what everybody had perhaps hoped. And maybe the other one is Heikki Kovalainen.
Definitely.
Lost an awful lot of confidence at McLaren. He was beaten consistently. And I think that kind of played a part in destroying his confidence over a couple of years, and he's taken a sort of step back down the grid. People are starting to look up and take notice of him again, and I think that's great. He's a lovely guy, really good guy, great guy in the car, and he knows what he's doing, and this could well, at times like this, could well play out well for his career in the future. I think he certainly hopes so, and I do too.
Yeah, I must say I do too as well. Mark, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, my friend. Appreciate your time, and you enjoy this coming weekend. I'm sure it's difficult to predict what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be a really, really cool one. And look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sasha. I'll be heading up to Silverstone in the morning. And I'm looking forward to it too. Thanks very much for chatting. We'll do it again soon.
Anytime. I really appreciate it. There we go. Marc Priestley, F1 Elvis. Follow him on Twitter for the latest in the world of Formula One.
Gearz on bulls.co.za with Sasha Martinengo.
He's kept himself out of trouble.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.